With great power comes great responsibility, were the words of Ben Parker, Peter's uncle who passed on tragically. In this video, Spider-Man's powers are morphed with that of the Hulk. So let's see how that statement played out, if indeed Spider-Man becomes all-powerful in that way. So here goes. Now, Bruce Banner is awakened yet again from one of those Hulk transformations, and as usual, he doesn't remember anything. He may have killed someone or tore down an entire building, but it doesn't matter now, because the Hulk and himself are two distinct and separate entities, and Bruce will not resort to blaming himself for what his alter ego, the Hulk, has been up to in the last 12 hours. Bruce starts to talk to himself about how he doesn't get what just happened. He has woken up in a crater big enough to take 3 men. As such, it would seem that Hulk landed badly from a great height. As Bruce starts to gauge his surroundings, he hears the voice of Spider-Man, and this complicates things even further. They are both clueless as to what's going on. Then suddenly, the spider sense tingles, and Spider-Man becomes alerted to danger. He asks Bruce to stand behind him as he looks around frantically for the danger to manifest. It eventually does, but not in the way that they both expected. It turns out that Spider Sense is pointing to Spider-Man himself. Then the strangest thing happens, and Spider-Man starts to turn into the Hulk, all green and monstrous and sort of stupid too. Strangely enough, Bruce doesn't seem surprised. He tries to talk to Spider-Man, or is it Hulk, or whatever this is. He says Spider-Man should not be scared, but Spider-Hulk replies with 3 words only. Not scared, angry. Then he racks his brain and manages to say one more word, and it is the name Osborn. Before Bruce can say or do anything else, Spider-Hulk throws a web and swings away. It's even a miracle that the web can hold him up as he swings through the city to find Osborn. Bruce immediately calls it in to inform someone that Spider-Hulk is on his way to where they are. We can only begin to imagine what this version of Spider-Man is capable of. His strength alone will be the combination of Spider-Man and Hulk, where both individuals are super strong by themselves. Then you can also throw in Spider-Man's flexibility and agility with the Hulk's jumping powers, and then you'd have a pretty unstoppable superhero. Spider-Hulk eventually gets close enough to this so-called Osborn, and as expected, the Fantastic Four show up. They try to reach out to Spider-Hulk, but he seems intent on smashing stuff. Spider-Hulk attacks the Thing first, and they exchange a few hard-hitting blows. The Thing tries to put Spider-Hulk to sleep with a sleeper hold, but Spider-Hulk maneuvers in such a way as to free himself. The Thing tries to appeal to the young man behind the suit and mentions Peter by name. At least, Spider-Hulk is still sensible enough to know that his identity is supposed to remain a secret and shouldn't be out there, let alone being spoken out loud by the Thing, who gets a headbutt for his indiscretion. The Thing was just the first wave as the other members of the crew come together to contain Spider-Hulk. Reed Richards wraps his elastic self around Spider-Hulk, hoping to tie him down. Then, Susie contains him in one of her bubbles, before the Thing knocks him out cold. The next thing you know, they are back at the beginning where the crater was. Bruce and Mr. Fantastic are in a debate as to what should be done going forward. Bruce tries to say that Spider-Hulk ought to be contained, and Reed reassures him that they have everything under control. Reed even retorts that Bruce ought to be the one to be arrested. They eventually settle for an abandoned military site on an isolated island. Spider-Hulk reverts back to just Spider-Man after the green stuff has waned. He doesn't remember much as everyone tries to reassure him. The Fantastic Four and Bruce answer his curious questions. They even admit that his mask was on him all the time and that no one saw Peter's true identity. They all hang for a little while before Reed decides they have to be on their way. No one wants to see Spider-Hulk in all his glory come to life again. You'd agree that would be dangerous to whoever was perceived to be in his way. So, Mr. Fantastic and the group calibrate the cameras and get going. Bruce decides to stay with Spider-Man against all common sense. The Thing insists that it ought to be him staying, but Bruce reminds him that Spider-Hulk might still remember how badly he got hit by the Thing, so even the Thing is not safe. And Bruce is hedging his bets on the fact that Spider-Hulk will not dare to harm him. So the evening comes as Bruce and Spider-Man converse a little. Spider-Man says he would rather not be transformed into the Hulk again and confides as much, but it's inevitable at this stage. Then the darkness comes and Spider-Man starts to change into Spider-Hulk. It's almost like a vampire or a werewolf phenomenon, but we don't get to see Spider-Hulk in his rage that night because we are fast-forwarded to the following morning. Spider-Man wakes up and the first thing he does is call out to Bruce. And the first thing Bruce says when he reemerges is to reassure Spider-Man that he had a good smashing workout through the night but held back when it came to hurting Bruce. As they talk, the Fantastic Four return to the island. The Human Torch wants to know if Spider-Man wreaked all that havoc with or without his pants. Spider-Man says no, or at least he doesn't remember. On the other hand, Bruce blurts out a yes, and Spider-Man is embarrassed that Bruce may have seen him without his clothes. Dr. Reed immediately gets to the business of the day and shows everyone some footage gotten from New York. In it, Spider-Man and the real Hulk are making their way through the city when they are confronted by none other than Loki. It's been a while since Loki and the Hulk locked horns, and we're not referring to the ones on Loki's crown. As such, there is no love lost between those two, and Loki is now surprised that the Hulk can communicate in English quite well. So Loki, being the reformed character that he is now, decides to do one better for his old nemesis. With the help of magic, he rids Bruce of the gamma radiation, but the sad part is, the green stuff ends up inside Spider-Man, who is close by. After watching the footage, they all decide to pay Loki a visit. They meet him in the middle of having a hot dog snack and he tries to defend his actions. They all urge him to reverse the spell, but he tells them it's not that straightforward and that it could make things worse. In short, Loki can't help them, so now they must return to science, and who better to science the heck out of it than the Fantastic Four? That is, in addition to Bruce Banner's intelligence, as well as the aspiring scientist in Peter Parker. They soon start to brainstorm in the lab. At first, Bruce is not so sure if Peter Parker should be with them, but then he surprises Bruce by pulling out a Sharpie and writing some complex equations on the whiteboard. It's not long before they figure things out and come up with a plan. They decide to recreate a gamma blast in a sort of containment box. Susie and Reed set the timer for 6 that evening and leave with some instructions for Peter. As the day counts down, Peter asks Bruce why it has to be him that keeps the Hulk. It could just as well be anyone, right? And Spider-Man already seems to be doing a generally good job of being a green beast. It seems Spider-Man is beginning to get the hang of being a Spider-Hulk and doesn't mind it anymore. But Bruce cuts him off and insists it has to be him that carries the burden, because that is really what it is, a burden. When the clock elapses, Peter presses the switch and the room goes boom in green. Bruce's Hulk now emerges and challenges Spider-Hulk. They punch the hell out of each other, and no one wants to concede to the other. But then Bruce taps into himself and gets really crazy. You can see the gamma lightning sparks emanating from his green body. He grabs Spider-Hulk by the neck, and the raw energy coming out from Bruce is so strong that it neutralizes whatever gamma radiation is left inside of Spider-Hulk. They both now revert back to their human forms. Spider-Man hands over a pair of pants to Bruce, and they congratulate themselves for fixing things. They also realize it's still nighttime, and Bruce could very well change into the Hulk at will. But when he does, he refers to Spider-Man by his real name. Spider-Man is surprised that the Hulk has seen through him and knows his real identity. The Hulk explains it by saying even Bruce is not privy to that information, but on the other hand, the Hulk is. And that is because the Hulk remembers Spider-Man's kindness when he once revealed himself as Peter. They soon get back to the beach on this isolated island and part ways as the Hulk wades into the ocean water on his way back to civilization. Spider-Man just looks on at his old friend walking away. So now Spider-Man experienced what it felt like to be in the Hulk's shoes, all thanks to Loki and his carefree magic for making that happen. And even greater thanks to the Fantastic Four from fixing the mess afterwards with some science. Apparently, science can beat magic under the right conditions. Now, if you could become anybody for one day, who would you choose? Bill Gates or Putin?
The story starts with the revelation that Eddie Brock, who is also the bodily host of the Venom symbiote, has somehow gone down with cancer. And to be honest, it's no surprise, having been infected by the symbiote for goodness knows how long. He only has a few days to depart this life, and the first thing he tries to do is get rid of the Venom side of him. But it turns out the symbiote refuses to let him be. Physically, Venom is not there anymore, but he still finds a way to haunt Eddie Brock and to inhabit his mind. At this point, it tempts him to exact his revenge on Spider-Man, hence the subtitle, and to be sure, it might as well be Eddie's last action while still alive. And this cold dish to which Venom and Eddie are preparing involves Aunt May, of all people. She is in critical condition in a hospital after a botched attempt on Peter Parker's life. Before now, Peter had revealed his true identity as Spider-Man and has been subsequently attacked. But Aunt May was in the crossfire and ended up unconscious in a hospital. So Venom is urging Eddie to hurt Peter by messing with Aunt May's life support machine in such a way that Peter will never know what hit him. Eddie is on the roof of the hospital where he's supposed to be receiving treatment for his cancer. And of course, he is in a conversation with the Venom side of him. They both reflect on the good old days and how they once owned the nights of New York. Venom encourages Eddie that in fact they still do, and starting from tonight, they'll certainly get their groove back. Then he tells Eddie to get back inside his room and lay in wait for Nurse Sims. He is supposed to kill her as practice for when he has to kill Aunt May. Nurse Sims comes into the room with Eddie's round of medication, but he's not on his bed. He is behind her and orders her to put down the tray. She replies to him respectfully by saying his full name and begging him to spare her life, except he doesn't want to be addressed in that way. Before she can react, Eddie cuts her up with a scalpel lying around in his room. A nurse thinks she heard someone scream, but there's a cleaner in the lobby using an automatic floor scrubber that drowns out the noise. Nurse Sims has been diced all over, and there is some blood on the floor. The adrenaline courses through Eddie, and he's not sure if he did the right thing. As usual, Venom is figuratively on his shoulders, telling him that the nurse deserved her death for bothering him all the time with her routine checks. Eddie also tries to signal that killing Aunt May might be more complicated than they anticipated. Again, Venom goes on about Aunt May being responsible for raising someone, namely Peter Parker, who would turn out to be his arch-enemy. Meanwhile, Peter is by Aunt May's bedside trying to console himself that he could actually save her. At that instance, he is a fugitive from the law, so he can't maneuver too much, so he has enlisted the help of a clairvoyant named Madame Webb. At that very instant, they are all gathered downstairs at the lounge behind the hospital chapel to perform what is known as a seance, or a ritual. Another ally of Spider-Man named Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat, is set up just outside the door as a guard. You can guess this is strictly off the books and was probably a last resort. Peter is so desperate to save Aunt May that he has gone to the darker side. While in Aunt May's room, he acknowledges that she would not have approved of this move. Then he promptly excuses himself and heads downstairs where the seance is supposed to take place. Aunt May's room would have been too small to take all the participants, so the basement room would have to do. Peter gets there and meets up with MJ and her aunt Anna Watson, who will both join the circle. All three hold hands in a chain with Madame Webb as they try to picture a good memory of Aunt May. It turns out, Peter is the first to latch on to a memory of Aunt May. He pictures the night they received the sad news that his Uncle Ben had died. In the vision, there are police cars everywhere, and he sees Aunt May and a much younger version of himself hugging it out and shedding tears of grief. As Peter looks on, Aunt May calls for his attention. She is standing behind him and he begs her to come back to life, but she declines and says it was her time to go anyway. He says the bullet was meant for him, but she disagrees and says if the places were switched as he says, then she would be the one mourning him in her old age, when she was supposed to be on her way out instead. By now, Eddie has gotten to Aunt May's hospital room and is standing over her comatose body, whereas Peter and his friends are busy downstairs trying to reignite Aunt May's consciousness. And they, or rather Peter, still has a psychic connection with her. He's begging her to come back with him, but instead, she tells him to get on with his life and to get married and have kids and grow old with his wife like Uncle Ben and her. Then, she starts to walk away from him. He goes after her, but she walks into some dimensional door before he can reach her, and the door is shut as Peter repeatedly bangs on it. In the real world, the others can hear Peter agonizing over the fact that Aunt May is finally gone. Even Madame Webb also senses that the connection is slowly fading. So, essentially, it's all over now, and Aunt May will not be coming back from the dead or surviving the coma. Up in her room, Eddie prepares himself to unplug Aunt May from her machine. Venom is right beside him, urging him on, but then Eddie pauses to think, and Venom is infuriated because really, there's nothing to think about. He says it's simple enough, and all Eddie has to do is switch the life support system off. And if he's feeling lucky, he can do something a little more drastic. But it seems Eddie is hearing a totally different voice other than that of Venom. And this separate voice is driving him crazy. So essentially, he's not going to do what Venom says, and you can see that he is being tortured up there. He says he needs to concentrate, but Venom is not letting him. Venom now admits that their relationship was never a partnership, but a dictatorship. He simply tells Eddie what to do, and Eddie must follow the commands whether he likes it or not. For a moment there, Eddie seems to have gotten his senses back. Was it something Venom said? Whatever the case, the look in Eddie's eyes afterwards seems like he gets the problem with him, and now he's resolved to do something about it. Peter and his friends downstairs begin to leave the room. Black Cat is making some comments to Anna Watson about how she owns quite a number of black suits for her hero identity. On his part, Peter seems a bit disappointed that he couldn't get Aunt May to come back with him. He thinks there's more to it, and tells Madame Webb, who is being wheeled out on her wheelchair, that there may have been another force at play. By the way, Madame Webb is permanently blindfolded. It's no wonder she was the perfect clairvoyant to help Peter communicate with Aunt May. As Peter racks his brain on what Aunt May was trying to pass across to him, his spider senses choose that moment in time to tingle. Peter hurriedly leaves the rest of them and rushes up to Aunt May's room. Upon getting there, he sees Eddie's knockoff mask lying around and then Eddie seated on the window sill. The glass behind him is broken, and a clean waft of breeze is pouring freely into the hospital room. However, it turns out Eddie didn't give in to Venom's temptations. Eddie reassures Peter that Aunt May is fine, but also tells him that Venom wanted her dead, and tried to use him to do it. Peter is somewhat confused because he doesn't connect the dots back to Venom. Eddie says he literally cut Venom out of himself and shows Peter his arms with all the multiple cuts. As Eddie stretches out his hands, he deliberately starts to fall through the open window. As he free falls on his way down, he asks for Peter's forgiveness in the hope that it will all be over for him by the time he hits the concrete. But then, Peter shoots some webbing his way. Next thing you know, Eddie wakes up in a hospital bed having apparently been saved by Peter. And the first voice Eddie hears is that of Venom still haunting him. At this point, Eddie gives up trying to fight off Venom and more or less embraces their partnership, or rather is it Venom's self-proclaimed dictatorship instead. The end.
Imagine a reality where Spider-Man, the beloved hero of New York City, becomes bonded with a powerful symbiote, transforming him into something darker. In this video, we see Spider-Man embracing his newfound symbiotic nature, validating the doubts voiced by Jonah Jameson, and evolving into an intriguing anti-hero. But just how far is Spider-Man willing to push the boundaries of his newfound identity? Well, stick around to find out. The story starts with utter darkness as a voice tells Peter to hurry. Next, we see Peter running through the expanse. He has these black blobs around him as he runs. The first impression we get is that it looks like a symbiote element has taken over him. Peter replies to the voice from earlier and insists that he's doing his best to hurry up to wherever this voice wants him to get to. But the voice starts to blame him and questions if he's really doing his best to hurry. As the voice accuses Peter for being slow, it places a few flashcards before him of people he's supposed to love, from Black Cat to Mary Jane to Aunt May and finally a hooded skull. That last one is creepy enough to rouse Peter from his nightmare. Once he wakes up, Peter acknowledges that he is indeed doing his best, but it may not seem that way to those he loves. To Aunt May, he has dropped out of school, and to MJ, he's cheating on her with Black Cat. Since it's still late in the night, Peter decides to get some fresh air, and that dark blob of a thing envelops him throughout. As Peter swings around the city, you can tell he loves this new alien suit. He says it's the only positive thing in his life right now, and it's a darn better suit than his previous one. It has unlimited webbing and can read his mind. Or is it his instincts? It can even mimic clothing and be transformed into looking like his old suit. By now, you can tell that this new suit is as dark as it gets, both literally and figuratively. Just then, Peter hears the scream of an older lady and swings into action. She's being attacked by muggers, and Spider-Man saves her. Once he's had the muggers entangled in his web, he swings away. But then, he blacks out, and that skull from earlier invades his mind. Suddenly, he's in his bedroom, throwing MJ to the side. Apparently, it was another nightmare. MJ apologizes and he returns the favor. She tells him that she shouldn't have freaked out when he revealed his Spider-Man identity to her. She insists that she should have been more supportive. Afterwards, Spider-Man decides to pay Dr. Reed a visit so he can check out this new and strange suit. He had been meaning to do this for a while, but on his way there, Spider-Man encounters the Hobgoblin, who he impatiently and thoroughly dispatches for being such a nuisance. Spider-Man even goes as far as unmasking the Hobgoblin and humiliating him. Again, Spider-Man is forced to take another detour when he meets Black Cat atop a roof. Spider-Man reluctantly smooches her a little and decides the visit to Dr. Reed can be delayed. The next day, Spider-Man reports to the Baxter Building, and the Human Torch lets Dr. Reed know that Spider-Man is here for his physical, so to speak. Reed drops whatever he's doing and places Spider-Man on a body scanner. Reed asks a few questions, and Spider-Man subsequently asks that he be allowed to take a nap while the scan goes on. Again, Spider-Man finds himself in a nightmare. In it, he tries to save Aunt May, but there are so many other victims in his way. He becomes conflicted and must decide between her and the other people. Right then, he wakes up in Reed's lab. Reed has decided on a way to help Spider-Man and suggests that he has to take off the suit entirely. Reed also acknowledges that the suit is a symbiote and that wearing it comes with a price. But Spider-Man freaks out and refuses to give up the suit. Leaving the lab on bad terms, he heads over to Aunt May's place to apologize and reconnect with her. And sadly, Hobgoblin is in the shadows watching them from a distance. The Hobgoblin must be so pissed that he is back for some sloppy seconds. Peter and Aunt May get to talking. Peter apologizes for dumping school, but Aunt May reassures him that she will always love him. Just then, Peter's spider senses start to tingle and boom, an explosion rocks the house. Peter is quick enough to shield Aunt May, and then the symbiote suit takes over him. He punches the Hobgoblin a few times until he can take no more. Then Peter's attention is drawn to the burning house. Aunt May is still trapped inside, and he moves to save her. But then, something strange happened because the symbiote suit won't let him go back for her. Apparently, symbiotes are allergic to fire, so the suit does all it can to hold Peter back. And then the inevitable happens, and the house blows up in Peter's face with Aunt May still in it. Peter is so angry, and the symbiote suit senses this too. Peter subsequently pours out all his anger on the Hobgoblin. Now, Peter has become righteously angry from here on out. Spider-Man's actions make the news the next day, and especially the front page of the Daily Bugle. Jonah Jameson would certainly have a field day with this one. Also, the Kingpin is in his office and weighs in on this piece of news. He calls on one of his lieutenants to start making some calls. Meanwhile, Peter takes out time to clear his head as he saunters down the street. People are generally going to and fro, not knowing who he really is or what he had done. He is also having an inward conversation with the symbiote that had since become a part of him. Peter didn't like that he had killed someone, but the symbiote reassures him that the Hobgoblin had it coming. But this conversation paled in comparison to the one Jonah was having with his deputy editor. Jonah had been proven right all along, even though his deputy insisted that they be cautious about painting Spider-Man as a bad guy. His deputy left the room, and suddenly Spider-Man bursts in through the window and proceeds to put the fear of symbiotes in Jonah. He threatens Jonah, and by extension, the Daily Bugle, not to print anything negative about him from henceforth. Before he leaves, he breaks Jonah's right palm and promises he will break the other one if Jonah does any wrong by him. Mary Jane soon catches up with Peter back at his place. She has been meaning to reconnect after the funeral, but it seems Peter has been unavailable as of late. When they finally meet, Peter simply acknowledges her concerns about this version of Spider-Man that's all over the news. Then he jumps out his window and swings away. Dr. Reed and the Fantastic Four have been following up on the news too, and are desperately in search of Spider-Man before the symbiote has the chance to totally take over Peter's persona. As Peter swings, he is attacked by Shocker, as his name suggests, with one of those blasts. Spider-Man simply knocks him out of the way. But then, attackers always come in twos, and Scorpion is not far behind. Spider-Man simply chokes him to death with some webbing and turns to Shocker to finish him off too. Next, Spider-Man pays a visit to Kingpin, who starts to go on and on about tracing Hobgoblin's death to Aunt May's murder and then to a certain Peter Parker. Before Kingpin can land, Spider-Man punches through him and rips out his throat. Elsewhere, all the usual Spider-Man baddies are in the same virtual meeting being hosted by Dr. Octavius. From their conversations, we get to know that Mysterio has been cloaking the gang until now. This is why Spider-Man hasn't found them yet. Craven suggests that it's high time they took the fight to Spider-Man. On their part, Rhino and Electro complained that they should have done exactly that before things went out of control. But Craven cautions them by saying they would have been dead just like the others if they had rushed in without a plan. Dr. Octavius now weighs in and asks one more person about how bad Spider-Man really is. It turns out, Jonah is in the virtual meeting too, and he is the only one who has seen this new and bad Spider-Man up close and lived to tell the tale. Jonah now insists that Spider-Man has always been bad and that he certainly needs to be stopped. Dr. Octavius makes the final say and decides it's game on. He dispatches Craven to think up a plan of action to hunt down and destroy Spider-Man. So when the plan is in place, they will take things from there. Then Dr. Octavius dismisses the meeting and the virtual screens disappear. Dr. Octavius is now alone with two of his henchmen within his lab. And might we say, the henchmen are dressed like droids. One of them asks if they should attempt to draw Spider-Man into the open, and Dr. Octavius retorts back by saying he doesn't pay them to think for him. He insists that they are supposed to wait for Craven to get back to him with a game plan. Meanwhile, they ought to start arming the men so when the plan gets rolling and they succeed in neutralizing Spider-Man, then the men can take out any other villain not affiliated with the Sinister Six. As tensions rise and alliances shift, a shocking twist unravels before our eyes. Just as Dr. Octavius regains control, a mysterious henchman steps forward wielding a deadly knife. But this henchman's true identity sends shockwaves through the room. It's none other than Eddie Brock. With dark determination in his eyes, Brock claims the ultimate responsibility to eliminate Spider-Man himself, defying the plans of the Sinister Six. As darkness looms, the stage is set for an epic clash in the next chapter.
Previously, Spider-Man, while on an alien planet, found a mysterious black suit. Unknown to him, this wasn't just a piece of clothing, but a living symbiote. Initially bonding with the suit, Peter later rejected it when he discovered its true nature. Instead of the familiar storyline we all know, where the symbiote attaches to Eddie Brock to become Venom, in this reality, Peter retained the symbiote. Under its influence, he took a dark turn, ending the threats of numerous villains, including the notorious Kingpin, Wilson Fisk. But what if Fisk survived? And what would happen if he acquired a fragment of the Venom symbiote? With Spider-Man's identity now public knowledge thanks to Fisk, the stage is set for a dangerous showdown. Things kick off with a bunch of police surrounding Peter's place. Previously, Kingpin spilled the beans about Spider-Man's true identity, which is Peter Parker. So now, the cops have Peter, MJ, Jonah Jameson, and Black Cat trapped. They're all brainstorming how to get out of this sticky situation. Peter still has this creepy feeling that the alien suit is out there somewhere, even after it got burned off him earlier. He's not in the mood to stick around and chat with the police, so he comes up with a plan to escape. Peter and MJ are about to make a run for it, and he tells Black Cat to take Jonah home. But Jonah Jameson is all upset and trying to show he's the boss. Peter gives him a piece of his mind and tells him to listen and go home. Peter Parker and MJ swing away from the scene, and Peter spots the Baxter Building, home of the Fantastic Four. They are now getting rid of the symbiotic influence. Now, Peter is consumed by guilt, pondering over his actions. MJ reassures him, telling him that it wasn't his fault. The Venom symbiote manipulated him, causing him to commit those crimes. MJ reminds Peter that he's the best person she knows, not because he's perfect, but because he does good despite his imperfections and struggles. She believes in him and encourages him to overcome the darkness. Outside the building, heroes like Iron Man, Beast, and the X-Men are all putting their heads together to figure out how to rescue the regular folks trapped inside. Peter, with his super senses, detects the slimy suit trying to reach out to him and lets Captain America know. But Cap's worried that the suit might try to take control again. In a super serious moment, Peter takes off his mask and looks Cap right in the eyes, showing how determined he is. "I won't ever let that thing control me again," Peter declares. Cap gives a nod and says, "Well, you do what you gotta do." They hand Peter Parker a tiny earpiece, and he gears up to follow the plan. The door opens up for him, probably because it wants Peter Parker. MJ isn't so thrilled about this and says, "I don't think you should go alone." But Peter's super sure about this, answering, "Nah, this is my job. I gotta do it." The Avengers and She-Hulk are waiting outside, ready to jump in if things get hairy. Peter heads in, and sneaky MJ joins him. Then Johnny shows up, and after some teasing talk, they decide they gotta get to the 33rd floor to find Reed. They spot some folks under the slimy suit spell, acting all spaced out and strange. Johnny sets things ablaze, and they hop on the elevator headed for the 33rd floor. They face off with Ben Grimm, who's now all taken over by the yucky symbiote. Peter's punches are fierce as he fights with all his might, not holding back like before. Even though he takes a hit to the gut, Peter doesn't give up and keeps going, totally focused on getting to Reed. While the intense fight rages on, Captain America and the gang manage to join in. They bump into a taken-over Reed Richards, who knows some important stuff that the icky symbiote wants. But the exact details of what Reed is planning are still a big mystery. Meanwhile, outside the Baxter building, it's pure chaos and craziness. Come on, Spider-Man, get up! We need your help! Things get even wilder as it turns out the slimy suit isn't scared of fire anymore. This twist adds a whole new layer of complication to an already super gripping story. In this crazy world where Venom isn't around and Spider-Man's got that snazzy suit, the story takes a wild turn. The way the yucky symbiote's power takes over Spider-Man and forces the Avengers to jump in shows just how bad things are getting. We catch up with Peter Parker as he wakes up and realizes that Mary Jane's in danger. Other heroes have been taken over by some strange force, but Peter's all worried about MJ's safety. And guess what? Mary Jane's right in the middle of a fight against the taken-over Reed from the Fantastic Four, who's now got that Venom goo controlling him. The symbiote reveals that Peter's love for MJ prevented their full bonding, setting up an intense confrontation. The Venom symbiote tells Mary Jane that it's because of her that it couldn't fully bond with Peter. The symbiote claims Peter's love for her caused him to hesitate and never fully commit. It's like dealing with a crazy ex. MJ is surprised, arguing that Peter loves her, but Mary Jane is just an obstacle to the symbiote, and it intends to end things. The Human Torch swoops in and flames his way with the gang to find an exit, but that tricky symbiote Reed stretches himself out to catch them. Just then, Spider gets a message from Torch saying that he and MJ are moving, and Reed's right on their tail. Torch tells Peter to dig around in the lab for info while he buys time to keep Reed away. It's mega stressful because Peter's got to navigate the lab with Reed, who's all taken over by the alien goo, and figure out how to stop him. Peter knows he can't freak out because the slimy thing loves feeding on anger. He keeps his cool and focuses on what needs to be done. Meanwhile, Sue Storm's helping out Alicia Franklin because things are going nuts in the Baxter building. Franklin can't be anywhere near Reed when he's all slimed up like this. Torch can only hold Reed off for a bit before the taken-over Captain America jumps in. Cap throws his shield at Torch, causing him to lose his grip on MJ, but Sue steps in with her force field to save MJ. In the lab, Peter discovers that all the symbiotes have been synthesized using elements of the main symbiote combined with Reed's unstable molecule formula. If they can stop Reed, the other symbiotes will revert to their normal state. It's like driving a stake into the original vampire, and all the others will weaken. With this newfound knowledge, Peter knows the weakness. He asks Johnny to buy him some time while he works on executing the plan. This is easier said than done, but it's crucial. When Thor uses Mjolnir to break through Sue's shield, he gains the upper hand in the fight. As Peter climbs out from the lab, he's determined to end this. With the knowledge of the symbiote's weakness, he's ready to confront Reed and bring an end to the chaos. Reed is waiting for him with Sue by his side. So nice of you to make it easy, I say. You won't be able to fight me or the rest of us now that we're together and stronger than you. Peter realizes that the root of the symbiote is love, as twisted as it is. Peter makes a deal, telling the symbiote to let Mary Jane go and stop possessing other heroes. And I'll give myself up willingly, Peter adds. The symbiote ponders this for a moment and agrees. But in a plot twist moment, it kills Reed. The symbiote knows that Reed is too smart and can't risk him trying to stop its plans. What a twist! The symbiote chases Peter in the lab, desperate to attach and bond with him. Peter explains that Reed felt guilty for turning Ben into the Thing. In a crazy twist of events, Reed came up with a cool gadget that made it possible for Ben to walk around like a regular human using a special image thingy. Just when things seemed tough because of the alien symbiote, Peter had a big surprise. He revealed that Johnny Storm was actually wearing the image thingy, making him look like the Human Torch. And guess what? The symbiote was scared of fire, so Johnny set things ablaze, causing a big boom that seemed to destroy the bad symbiote. Eventually, Spider-Man and MJ were spotted chilling together far away. But hey, winning didn't come free. Reed sadly passed away. Now, I don't remember that image thingy being talked about before, but correct me if I'm wrong. This sudden gadget thing makes me wonder about the ending and the switch between Johnny and Spidey. Peter got hauled into court for his shenanigans, but he had some backup from his superhero buddies. Since the symbiote made him do things they didn't want to, their stories played a big part in his trial. And guess what? He wasn't found guilty. The wrap-up has Peter and MJ visiting Ben at his grave. Peter thinks about all the mess the symbiote caused, and he's not sure if he can be Spider-Man anymore. But surprise, surprise, Sue shows up and gives Peter a pep talk. He's feeling pretty guilty about Reed's death, but Sue says it's not his fault. They've all had their share of tough times, but she reminds him about their origin story. That rocket thingy that gave them powers. Sue spills the beans that Ben's transformation into the Thing almost made Reed super sad, but Reed didn't let it get to him. He turned things around and made something good out of it. He taught them all to find meaning even in bad stuff. Then she hands Peter a snazzy Fantastic Four uniform and says, "Hey Peter, let's tackle this together." So Peter becomes an official member of the Fantastic Four, now comprised of herself, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, Ben Grimm, the Thing, and now Spider-Man himself. Being on the team changes things, but there are still problems. Now that people know who Spider-Man is, he becomes a target. Meanwhile, Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, makes a sinister plan using new kinds of alien symbiotes. Spider-Man accidentally took everything from Fisk, leaving him hurt and without happiness. Fisk's face is really hurt, so he needs a machine to breathe and can't eat properly. As Fisk gets ready to join with the symbiote, Peter works hard to help New York City. He uses money from the Richards family to give hospitals cool gadgets. At a party, Peter meets a congressman who likes what he's doing and tells him about kids who want to meet Spider-Man. But when Peter gets into an elevator to see the kids, his spider sense warns him about danger. All of a sudden, the elevator plummets and crashes, but somehow Peter survives and finds himself in a dark alleyway. He hears a familiar voice. It's Kingpin. This time, no other heroes can help Spider-Man. Kingpin explains his big plan. His scientists tricked other heroes with a signal from a different place so they can't help. With no one around, Kingpin wants to kill Spider-Man and make him pay for hurting his face. The tension rises as Peter Parker, now Spider-Man, tries to get out of the hospital. He looks for a way to face the new Kingpin but is blocked from escaping, leaving him with few choices. Spider-Man does his best to fight Kingpin, using all his tricks to hurt him. However, Spider-Man's attacks don't work against the strong Kingpin. They have a big fight, and Kingpin starts to win. He throws Spider-Man down, making him feel dizzy and weak, making him an easy target for Kingpin's attack. Just when things look really bad for Spider-Man, someone unexpected shows up and stabs Kingpin in the chest. Spider-Man gets up and sees the mysterious person who saved him. Quickly changing his focus, Spider-Man rushes to rescue his friends from Kingpin. While Spider-Man escapes, Kingpin, hurt and weak, meets another dangerous character. Carnage, a very dangerous symbiote, is hunting people across the Marvel Universe. This time, Carnage goes after Kingpin. Carnage easily kills Kingpin and takes his symbiote, making Carnage even stronger. With this new power, Carnage looks for his next target, setting up a scary new part of the story.
Hey folks, have you seen the latest animated Spider-Verse movie? Without giving much away, it turns out a whole verse of spider heroes come together every Halloween to party. Just kidding. In this video, we see Spideys from various universes collectively working to save humanity, and you can trust that it's better than the movie version, so stick around to find out for yourself. So Miles Morales of Earth 616 is busy as usual fighting crime. This time he is pitted against multiple Vulturians, and he's doing quite well at containing them. They are even surprised at his ability to electrocute one of them, like they had never seen that side of Miles before. So an electrocution here and a web straitjacket there, it's simply another crime-fighting day for Miles. One of the Vulturians even crashes a barbecue party and threatens to kill the guests with a gun, but Miles is able to outwit him. Then suddenly, a portal opens above the rooftop party, and out comes a number of Spider-Persons from other dimensions. There is Spider-Gwen, Spider-Woman, Octavio Otto as a good version of him, Spider-Noir, Spider-UK, Spider-Ham, and Spider-Punk. Apparently there's an emergency, and they need Miles. It turns out the Inheritors are at risk of breaking out from prison. We switch to San Francisco, where Count Nefaria is in battle with Superior Octopus. Is it us? Or doesn't this Count fellow look like Doctor Strange? Count Nefaria is supposed to be a crime lord, and the so-called Superior Octopus is trying to contain him. Then, Octavio threatens Nefaria by showing him virtual images of members of his family who are about to die at the hand of Octobots if he doesn't give up his ambition regarding San Francisco. Only then does Nefaria fly away, hoping that Octavio becomes consumed by his dark side. Next, we see what Nefaria meant. Octavio has an entire lab of clones that might help him live for as long as he wants. It seems he is already going bad. The small clique of Spider-Men passes through the portal to the Superior Octopus's world on a mission to destroy the tech Superior Oc is using. They breach his lab and confront him, or at least they try to convince him that the tech is unstable, but he refuses to shut it down. So, the battle is on. As they fight off the self-styled Superior Octopus, the other good version of Octavius tries to hack into the system. But it seems it's too late as Spider-Noir jumps and attempts to destroy the clone pods. Suddenly, one of the Inheritors named Morlun breaks out and sucks the life out of Spider-Noir, and not even a blast can stop him. His sister, Verna, emerges too and kills Spider-UK for punching her brother. Then, finally, Gen X emerges as the last member of the group.
Now the remaining spider heroes realize they are screwed. But they must fight to contain this first wave of inheritors before more of them are awakened. They go on to try their best as they shoot more webbings. At some point, they realize the best way to contain the threat would be to blow up the lab. Superior Octopus confesses that he has indeed rigged the lab to self-destruct in situations like this. And so, as the countdown begins, the spider heroes web the entire lab, and Spider-Gwen decides to stay behind long enough to hold Verna down. She promises the others that she will teleport herself out of there on time. However, in the last 3 seconds of the countdown, Verna somehow manages to see Spider-Gwen, and then the lab goes boom. The other spider heroes look on and begin to fear the worst. Meanwhile, the Superior Octopus gets a transmission from one of his Octobots in the city. It seems Verna was able to see Spider-Gwen's portal watch, and with it, she has resurrected more members of her villainous family. Now that they are gathered, their first line of action is to build more resurrection vats. This is so they can increase their numbers to a more formidable group. At this stage, Genix admits all of this would take time. And fortunately, this plays into the plan of the spider heroes. In other words, it has bought them some time to plan and initiate a counterattack. They promptly open a portal and head straight for Loomworld, the home of the Web of Life and Destiny. They meet up with Karn, who is the spider guardian there. It is from the Loom world that they depart to fulfill the part they will play in defeating the Inheritors. As they leave, Verna suddenly arrives at Loomworld and challenges Karn, who is all too ready to fight to the death. Meanwhile, Superior Octopus changes his suit and wants to be referred to as Superior Spider-Man from henceforth. And together with the good Octavius, they start to seek out and recruit capable spider heroes from other dimensions who will join the fight to defeat the Inheritors without any inhibitions. But then, there's Verna at the core of what makes the League of Spider Heroes tick. If she succeeds in killing Karn on Loomworld, then the Inheritors will have an advantage over the spider heroes, whatever they do. Karn strikes first and stabs Verna in her gut with one of his spider legs, but then Verna starts to suck him dry, and he eventually dies. Also, it turns out Spider-Gwen didn't die in the blast but was transported to Earth 3109 without her portal watch. In short, she is stranded in a dimension she knows nothing about. Miles Morales tries to recruit Spider India, and together they head back to their base of operations, where they meet the other group of spider heroes who want to fight the Inheritors the right way. On the flip side, Superior Spider-Man is in the middle of assembling his group too. He has just managed to recruit Leopardon and its spider pilot named Takaya to the group. Presently, they are all aboard the giant robot, trying to strategize their best way forward. From our vantage point, it seems these two groups of spider heroes are on a collision course, and how can they defeat the threat posed by the Inheritors if they can't agree? The Scarlet Spider, formerly known as the Jackal, suddenly arrives, and Superior Spider-Man doesn't like this. When he was the Jackal, he was responsible for creating the same tech that made the Inheritors come alive, but now he wants to make amends. Just then, a transmission comes in for Superior Spider-Man's group. Miles Morales simply wants to announce that his group is going ahead to attack the Inheritors at the U-Labs facility built by none other than the Jackal in his old life, and the Superior Spider-Man is certainly rooting for their downfall. Back at the U-Building, the small band of Inheritors has secured the body of Solos, their father, but there's still a lot of work to be done before they can resurrect him. Spider-Ham is in the vents spying on them. He reports back to his team, and they plan to blow up the main pillars of the building as they jump through a portal to safety, thus destroying the tech in the process. Just as Miles is about to press the button, an Inheritor attacks him, and a fight ensues. The spider heroes don't mind dying, and urge one of them to blow the bombs manually. As the countdown begins, Superior Spider-Man's group suddenly shows up as reinforcements. They save the other group from imminent destruction. They all get aboard Leopardon, and it blasts off, leaving the Inheritors behind. While aboard the robot, a certain Spider-Man with 6 hands, aka Norman Osborn, starts to mouth off about how the group must sacrifice one world as collateral damage. But is he right? Elsewhere, Spider-Woman enters a portal and is surprised that she possesses a Soul Stone. Just then, Morlun seizes her and the stone. She shoots some radioactive webbing at his face, and in the process, proves that the Inheritors can't eat her. Apparently, radioactivity is one of their weaknesses. Morlun then inserts the stone and wham! Solos, their father, is resurrected. The spider heroes find themselves in an abandoned world where they first battled with the Inheritors and defeated them. They hope they can find traces of the all-powerful Enigma Force here and use it to defeat the Inheritors for a second time. Just then, Spider-Punk pokes his head through a portal and alerts the others that Solus is now alive, and it's only a matter of time before the Inheritors gain strength in their numbers. The spider heroes decide they need a plan, but not before Norman Osborn walks out on them because they are not decisive enough for him. He takes Spider-Man with him, and they end up in Loomworld. By now, Karn is dead, and Norman has big plans for the vacancy on Loomworld. He rigs a bomb to the Universal Spider Portal with the hopes of destroying the interdimensional web and thus trap the Inheritors on the world they presently are. This way, interdimensional travel is not possible anymore, and other worlds are protected. The downside is the spider heroes are also trapped, and their portal watches become fried. As they begin to realize their predicament, Superior Spider-Man sneaks out with the Scarlet Spider to try to kill the Inheritors and end things at once. They sneak into the building, and once Scarlet Spider turns his back, Superior Spider-Man whacks him in the head. Apparently, he has struck a deal with the Inheritors to deliver Scarlet Spider-Man alive. Once they suck his essence, they will be able to work the tech he created, allowing them to recreate the resurrection vats. In return, the Inheritors will spare the Earth Superior Spider-Man calls home. Back at the lab, the group is oblivious to what Superior Spider-Man just did, but they are also able to use leftover traces of the Enigma Force to communicate with Captain Universe, or whatever it is that is coming through their portal. It accuses them of being unworthy to call upon it. They admit they've made mistakes in the past and they are sorry. This Enigma Force ultimately picks Miles Morales to wield its powers. Meanwhile, a certain Spider-Man follows Superior Spider-Man and is about to expose him as a conniving web-slinger. But then Superior Spider-Man makes him see reason. It's all part of a plan to destroy the Inheritors. Just then, Morlun attempts to suck the Scarlet Spider's essence, but gets poisoned by the food. Scarlet Spider has died and been resurrected up to 27 times, and as Morlun eats, he also imbibes these many lives, and it's not very appetizing to him. The Inheritors then catch Superior Spider-Man and his pal in the middle of their conversation, and just when they are about to eat them too, Captain Universe in all his glory shows up with the rest of the Spider team. A battle ensues between the captains and Solus, who is all too glad to consume the Captain Universe for a second time. The battle rages on all fronts as more Spider heroes join and try to contain the threats. Superior Spider-Man gets back to where Scarlet Spider is, seeing the Inheritors have abandoned him there to fight off the Spider heroes. He has decided to try a different approach to ending the Inheritors, and requires Dr. Octavius' help. Meanwhile, the Pattern Maker arrives from Loomworld to reinforce the team. Then, to make things even sweeter, Spider-Gwen arrives with many more Spider heroes, including the original Peter Parker, who defeated Solus before. Solus attempts to strike Captain Universe from behind, but is hit by a blast so powerful that it dazzles Solus. At the lab, Superior Spider-Man has fine-tuned his plan, and with the help of Peter Parker, he communicates it to the rest of the Spider heroes. But first, Takayo lends Leopardon's humongous sword to Captain Universe, which he uses to slay Solus and a few Inheritors. Then they all come together to trap Morlun. So here's the thing. The plan involves transferring the consciousness of the Inheritors into new babies that will be raised to be good. At first glance, the plan makes a lot of sense, but then there's the issue of who would raise the babies. May Parker, who is a grandma version of Spider-Man, steps forward to take up the challenge. The Enigma Force is lifted from Miles and returns to its source. Everyone says their goodbyes to everyone else, and after everything that has just transpired, we are left with Norman Osborn smiling to himself at an undisclosed location as he holds a liquid bomb in his hands. This is definitely one for the archives, where we see Miles Morales stepping up as a leader. We also see a version of Spider-Man that is also an ambitious version of Dr. Octavius. How crazy is that? Ultimately, the League of Spider Heroes comes together to defeat the Inheritors, if turning them into babies can be categorized as defeat. Even more so, a version of Norman Osborn, aka Hobgoblin, is also a conniving version of Spider-Man, and it begs the question, who can anyone really trust? Picture this, a young and untested Spider-Man faced with a gripping dilemma. Can you imagine the weight of a life taken at such an early stage? In this video, we see Spider-Man taking a treacherous path, getting his hands dirty, and leaving scars that will last a lifetime. Stay till the end to discover the devastating impact of these actions on his life. Apparently, there is supposed to be a Spider-Man title where Peter Parker ends up committing manslaughter. However, the story doesn't start with Spider-Man, but with Wolverine, and he is in the middle of a standoff in some isolated East German camp. He has a red-haired character named Charlemagne with him, or Charlie for short. It's the middle of the Cold War between the CIA and the KGB, and Charlie is embedded deep in the KGB as a double agent. She had reached out to Wolverine because her cover had been blown, so now Wolverine has to extract her. But before they can escape, a big group of KGB loyalists try to stop them, and Wolverine rips through them like minced meat. By the time he is done, Charlie is gone, leaving behind only a pendant. A decade or so later, Spider-Man is swinging his way through the city of New York. As usual, he is looking for some action he can photograph and make a quick buck out of. He also feels guilty that he is using his powers to cash in. As he swings and hopes for a good night, he hears a scream from a young girl running down the street. There's also a well-dressed, red-haired woman that sticks out from the rest of the seedy crowd. Spider-Man proceeds to check the screaming girl's story out. He gets to Sophie and Bert's shop, and they both have been shot point blank, in between the eyes. Despite his guilt, Peter takes pictures, and the next thing he does is hand them over to his editor. Peter now remembers that he has a dinner date at Aunt May's place and has to catch a train there. As usual, he is late, and Mary Jane is the one who answers the door. From the looks of it, they go on to have a jolly time, but the hosts seem like a couple who need to sort themselves out. At the end of the evening, Aunt May sees Peter and MJ off,
and both are soon well on their way back to the city. They get to Times Square, and suddenly Peter's spider senses kick in. He figures there's a sniper on the roof, and he desperately needs to change into his Spidey suit. He excuses himself from MJ without explaining why. Soon, the police and the SWAT team arrive as well. Afterwards, Peter gets to MJ's place and tries to make amends. He ends up kissing her, and things get really weird between them. This is when he decides to skip town and leave it all behind, and that includes his Spider-Man hero persona. Down at his office, Jonah Jameson is being briefed on the latest killings to rock New York. His informant thinks the murders of Sophie and Bert and the roof sniper are connected. He thinks Agent Charlemagne has resurfaced and is cleaning up former KGB agents. Jonah agrees to run the story just as Ned, the informant, asks for a reliable photographer. So Jonah gets on the phone and offers Peter the job. On his part, Wolverine gets to hear about Charlemagne in the news after all these years. He leaves the X-Mansion to seek her out. He goes all the way to Berlin, thinking he'll find her there. But Wolverine gets jumped by a few KGB agents who suspect he knows where Charlemagne is. When they figure he's just as clueless as them, they let him be. Wolverine even catches Charlemagne's scent right there, but she disappears into the night yet again. The next day, Wolverine is in Berlin's equivalent of Times Square, and while there, he catches the scent of none other than Peter Parker, who is there with Ned, the investigative journalist from earlier. Peter tries to complain to Ned that he shouldn't have come on this trip. Wolverine, on his part, takes note. That evening, as Peter finishes up his long-distance call to Aunt May, Wolverine appears and tries to convince Peter to go back home. He asks Peter to follow him as they swing into the night. By the time Peter gets back to the hotel, he finds that Ned has been murdered and that his killers are still in the room. They are about to fire on Peter when Wolverine crashes in and takes them all out. Before these KGB agents can regroup, Wolverine and Peter must run away. This time around, Peter listens and gets as far as the bus station on his way to the airport. But right then, he has a moment of reflection and decides to face this danger head-on. So he finds a shop that's still open so he can purchase any outfit that looks close enough to his Spidey suit, and voila! He hits a jackpot! Fortunately, Spider-Man has put a tracker on Wolverine, and he tries to follow it as he swings through the city. But then the tracker leads him to the wall separating East and West Germany. Wolverine has crossed over to the eastern side in his quest to find Charlemagne, so Peter dares to do the same. But the wall police are everywhere. Spider-Man is able to outwit these villains and barely avoids getting shot. He traces the tracker to a hotel, but Wolverine has lost him. Wolverine himself has tracked down Charlemagne to an old factory just in time to see her in action. There are multiple dead bodies in her wake. Now he has her cornered and plants a kiss for old time's sake. She is happy to see him too. They head over to her house in the East German countryside, and it's a big house. It seems Charlemagne has been busy amassing a fortune by spying privately for hire. She's been doing this for the longest time, and now she's gotten tired and wary. After a few months of bunking with Wolverine, she suggests they go out on the town. It's an expensive restaurant, and Wolverine senses that the place is packed with assassins. Just then, Spider-Man bursts in, not fully realizing the extent of the situation. All the goons in the room start shooting at Wolverine and Charlemagne as Spider-Man jumps to safety and attaches himself to the ceiling. Amid the commotion, he looks over at Wolverine and Charlemagne. They seem to love the way things are going. Apparently, Charlemagne already knew that having dinner that evening at this specific restaurant would result in a shootout. She even pulls out a gun from nowhere and shoots a few rounds. Meanwhile, Wolverine is busy slicing and dicing his way through the shooters. Spider-Man soon joins him. By then, Charlemagne had found a way to get out of there. Wolverine and Spider-Man both trace her down to a house in a seemingly quiet suburb. First, they check out the house and figure there are quite a number of armed men behind its doors. But then they decide to engage and swoop in. Wolverine is having a field day taking out the bad guys regardless of their guns. However, Spider-Man is a bit reluctant to take a life, even if it's the life of a bad guy. Once they're done with the lobby, Wolverine figures Charlemagne is being held down in the basement, so they check it out. It turns out there are dead bodies down there, and Charlie is responsible for them. And so begins a wild goose chase to stop Charlie's rampage, except Wolverine discovers dead body after dead body from one KGB safe house to another, and it seems Charlemagne is always 5 steps ahead of Wolverine and Spider-Man. That night, Wolverine gets called up for a meet at the Berlin cemetery. It's supposed to be Charlemagne's last gesture after successfully completing her long list of targets. As they hug it out, she wants Wolverine to drive his claws into her and spare her the ordeal of being caught by the KGB. He almost does it, but then Spider-Man shows up and tries to stop him. They engage in a fight, and while they are distracted by an agency helicopter overhead, Charlie tricks Spider-Man and he takes a powerful swing at her, thinking she's Wolverine. She dies instantly from the nasty punch, and so her wish has been granted. Afterwards, Wolverine is able to secure fake passports for both of them, and they easily get back to West Germany through customs. Peter gets on a flight right away, while Wolverine stays back to take care of some business. Peter can't seem to get the image of Charlemagne's death out of his head. and the guilty feeling remains until he gets home. Jonah Jameson calls Peter to acknowledge the photos and ask about Ned, but then Mary Jane comes over, and they hug it out, and Peter feels a little relieved for the time being. So what started as a routine night for Spider-Man spirals into a spy thriller. Then it ends with him accidentally neutralizing Charlemagne, the main spy, who just so happens to be Wolverine's love interest. How do you think he feels? Whatever the case, Spider-Man feels worse. Spider-Punk is a different version of Spider-Man that just so happened to appear in the most recent Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse movie. Now, let's learn more about him, if you don't mind. Spider-Punk's story began in a comic created by Dan Slott and Oliver Coipel, debuting in The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 10 in January 2015. Interestingly, Spider-Punk's appearance was originally meant for Spider-Man UK, but everyone liked the design as a punk rock version, so it was reused for Spider-Punk. In the fictional world, Spider-Punk comes from the Earth 138, and he is not a variation of Peter Parker, but rather a variant of Hobie or Hobart Brown. Hobie's origin story reveals that he was once a teenage squatter who was bitten by a radioactive spider due to illegal waste dumping by a big corporation. The spider bite granted him spider-like powers, and combining it with his love for punk rock, he became Spider-Punk. Spider-Punk is nicknamed the Anarchic Spider-Man and Spider-Punk, though he doesn't like the latter title for no reason. In terms of abilities, Spider-Punk has superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, endurance, and balance. He can stick to and climb walls, shoot webs to swing between buildings, or entangle enemies. He also uses his spiked mask and guitars as weapons. He's a skilled guitarist and drummer, but admits he's a terrible singer, which he says is intentional as part of the punk rock style. When he performs on stage, he uses his guitar and rebellious attitude to make a difference. In this alternate reality, he lives in a fascist corporate America that has left the youth feeling angry and hateful, so they express their emotions through punk rock, which they use to rebel against the elite rulers of this world. And Hobie, who is a fierce and outspoken teenager in his own right, becomes the leader of this punk rock rebellion. He believes the powerful want people to lose hope, but he refuses to bow down to them. Instead, he'd rather stand up for what he believes in, just like his rock idol Gwen Stacy. Hobie's enemies include Earth 138's fascist leaders, like President Osborn, and other villains like Kraven, Kingpin, and those employed by Osborn. His allies include Hulk or Robbie Banner, who helps him fight against the terrorist organization Hydra. Brown teams up with Hulk and Captain Anarchy, aka Carl Morningdew, to take on different foes and protect their city. At some point, Hobie forms his own spider army to stand against President Osborn and his Thunderbolts. Also, Hobie creates a closer-knit team called the Spider Band, including Riri Williams, whose secret identity is Riotheart, as well as Captain Anarchy, Hulk, and other allies. They go on a tour across the US to take down the villains that emerge after Osborn's defeat. In one of the more intense battles, Spider-Punk and his followers confront President Norman Osborn, with Osborn's police trying to stop their rebellion. And so the comic rendition goes, it's morning in America, and President Osborn is in charge. Spider-Punk is ready to fight against Osborn's army, standing on a truck with his guitar and pedals. He calls himself a radioactive suicide machine, leading the Spider Army, a group of tough and daredevil fighters. Osborn's police come equipped with symbiotes, just like Venom. There's a TV ad by Oscorp praising the same creation called the Variable Engagement Neurosensitive Organic Mesh, which is actually Venom spelt out from an acronym. Osborn tells Spider-Punk that they're making America great again and won't tolerate him and his gang. They plan to sweep the country clean. Spider-Punk and his army don't have the same resources as the police or the media, but they have passionate hearts, love, rage, and powerful punk rock music. With their amps turned up to the max, they release intense sound, which happens to be Venom's weakness. Osborn gets weakened by the loud punk rock, allowing Spider-Punk to confront him. Spider-Punk smashes his guitar through Osborn's head, defeating him. He takes off his mask and proudly raises his guitar, claiming this is the day they beat the president with his cops and reclaimed America from those who wanted to oppress them. Observing this hard-earned victory, the superior Spider-Man from Earth 616, who is really an incarnation of Dr. Otto Octavius that has taken over Peter Parker's body, decides to recruit Hobie for an interdimensional spider army. Their mission is to stop the Inheritors, a dangerous family that feeds on the life force of spider totems from different dimensions. Otto's team joins forces with another spider army led by Earth 833's Billy Braddock, also known as Spider UK. Under Spider UK's leadership, Hobie and his team travel to Earth 3123. There, they convince the renegade inheritor Karn to rebel against his family and join them.
The journey leads them to Loom World for a final showdown with the Inheritors. The Spiders overpower their enemies, leaving the Inheritors stranded on a dangerous radioactive planet on Earth 3145. The Spider Totems return to their homeworlds, and Karn takes control of the Web of Life and Destiny. After that battle, some of the Spider Slingers formed a group called the Web Warriors to protect the multiverse. However, Hobie Brown decided to go back home and celebrate Osborn's defeat with his band, the Spider Slayers, at a concert for their world's Spider Army. During the concert, they get into a fight with Tombstone Records over control of the free media net. Things get really chaotic when Spider-Ham 2099 from Earth 93,726 unexpectedly shows up. He says there have been disruptions in the interdimensional web caused by the Web Warriors. Upon learning that Gwen Stacy is one of the Web Warriors, Brown joins forces with the others to fix the problem. In another adventure, Brown helped defeat an army of interdimensional Electros with Gwen's help. They used a special technology with the help of Spider-Man from Earth 50,810 to vibrate the interdimensional web back into place. Later, they were captured by Wolf Spider, who was hoping to drain their life force, but they managed to escape and foil his plan. Brown also became part of a baseball team called the Amazing Arachnids, playing against the multiversal Wolverines. Back on Earth 138, Brown faced Kang the Conglomerator, who revealed that his image rights as Spider-Punk were being exploited for profit. Kang then tried to entrap him, but with the help of Captain Anarchy and Hulk, Brown managed to resist Kang's plans. However, Kang also told Brown that he was destined to die young. Shortly after this revelation, Brown was asked for help by Spider-Woman from Earth 982 to fight against the returning Inheritors. Brown agreed to join the effort. He reunited with the Web Warriors like Spider UK and Ghost Spider and teamed up with other Spider people from various dimensions, including Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, and a heroic Dr. Octopus. Together, they discovered a lab containing the Inheritors' cloning tubes in San Francisco. While trying to destroy the tubes, they faced the Superior Octopus, who refused to let them destroy the tubes. The Spiders fought Superior Octopus, but suffered losses when a resurrected Morlun attacked Spider-Man Noir. The remaining Spiders escaped with Superior's help and joined a larger Spider army to defeat the Inheritors and thwart their reemergence. In his own reality, Spider-Punk teamed up with Captain Anarchy to confront Kraven and his hunters with their dangerous weapons. After defeating them, Hobie brought one of the abandoned weapons to his Spider base, which was in the Brooklyn Community Center. At the Spider base, Hobie showed the weapon to his close friend and ally, Riotheart, who recognized that it was military-grade technology and very powerful. But just then, they were interrupted by news of Kraven causing trouble again. Spider-Punk, Riotheart, and Captain Anarchy rushed to the scene. They managed to capture Kraven, who then revealed he was working as a mercenary for an unknown person. The plan was to make Brooklyn as dangerous a place as possible in order to drive people away from the neighborhood. In return, Kraven was given weapons to fight against Spider-Punk. However, their exchange was interrupted by Taskmaster, who used a flash grenade and released Kraven. However, the Spider-Band fought bravely, and with the help of Kamala Khan, they managed to defeat Taskmaster. And Riri's force field also protected them from a bomb left behind by Taskmaster. The explosion led them to discover one of Osborn's old bunkers, indicating that his evil operations were still active across the country. The four of them then decided to get on the road. They traveled in the Spider van to take down these bunkers and anyone affiliated with the fascists. In Philadelphia, they found a bunker controlled by Kingpin, and with the help of Daredevil drummer of Philly, they defeated his marauders, and sticking to the punk rock theme of Earth 138. Daredevil decided to stay behind, but the Spider Band continued their tour, with the final stop in Washington, D.C. Their investigation in D.C. led to a public confrontation with Norman Osborn and his supervillain allies, Taskmaster, Officer Venom, and War Sentry. Hulk and Daredevil joined the battle, and they fought against the authoritarian villains. When the situation seemed dire, Riri connected Spider-Punk's guitar to her heart's power source. With one powerful stroke of the strings, Spider-Punk's mind-blowing sound blew Norman and his minions away for the umpteenth time, saving the day. Fun fact, it was a 10,000-watt electric guitar sonic boom.
Spider-Man 2099 is a really cool version of Spider-Man in comic books, and we'll explain why. In the first part of the Spider-Verse story, Spider-Man 2099 plays an important role as the leader of the League of Spider-People. However, in this video, we'll tell you his story.
I'm sorry, who exactly are you supposed to be?
So, Spider-Man 2099 was created by Peter David and Rick Leonardi. He first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man 365 in August 1992 as a preview, and then in Spider-Man 2099 Issue 1 in November of the same year. The man behind the mask is Miguel O'Hara. He's half Mexican and half Irish. Fun fact, he actually came before Miles Morales as the first Hispanic Spider-Man. Miguel is from the year 2099, and he lived on Earth 928. He used to work as a genetic scientist for the Alchemax Corporation. Miguel had this idea to recreate the powers of the original Spider-Man, Peter Parker, using genetic splicing. But things didn't go as planned when his boss, Tyler Stone, who was a terrible person, got him addicted to a dangerous drug called Rapture. Despite the addiction, Miguel was determined to find a cure. He tried to rewrite his own genetic code to break free from the drug's hold. Now, you'd better stick around because there's much more to the story than that little sneak peek. So, let's start in the Nueva York of 2099. 5 teens are flying around in their hover car, but trouble finds them when they encounter Spider-Man being chased by some flyboys from the public eye. Spider-Man manages to escape, but he crashes into Officer Estevez in the process. Back at his apartment, Miguel is having a tough time. His digital assistant, Lila, tells him about some messages he received. His boss wants him to give in to his drug addiction and come to the office. His brother, Gabe, reaches out to him despite their differences. And his fiancée, Dana D'Angelo, is worried sick about him after seeing him in a drugged state. Miguel's behavior is getting strange, and even Lila is noticing something is off. Miguel wants to fix the mistakes he's made, so he starts recording everything that led to his current situation, starting from when he worked at Alchemax. The corporation saw great potential in Miguel and gave him a lot of support for his education. They made him the head of a new genetics program. However, this caused problems with Aaron Delgado, who was higher up in the company. Aaron didn't like Miguel and thought he was arrogant and disrespectful. Miguel was proud of the progress they had made, especially in changing the genes of test animals. He even found inspiration from files on Spider-Man, a hero from the past with amazing spider-like abilities. However, the company sought faster results, so they introduced a convict named Mr. Sims as a test subject. Miguel wasn't ready for human testing, but he had to try anyway. The experiment with Mr. Sims went wrong, and he turned into a disfigured creature that attacked Miguel. Despite the terrible outcome, Tyler Stone, the boss, saw it as some positive results, and on his part, Miguel felt like quitting after this disaster. Stone acted like he accepted Miguel's decision to leave and even gave him some special wine. However, the wine was laced with a drug called Rapture, which is expensive and addictive. It's a mind-altering drug, and Stone wanted to keep Miguel dependent on it, even if he left the company. In other words, once you go Rapture, you never go back. In a dazed state from the drug, Miguel went home and had a bad experience. He lashed out at his fiancée, mistaking her for a monster. He explained to her that he's now stuck as an addict, even if he quits Alchemax. At this point, Miguel believed he could escape his current situation by using his genetic structure saved as a sample in the Corporate Raider program. He had been experimenting with it on apes and hoped that if he survived the trial process, he could return to his pre-drug state. Unknowingly, Aaron Delgado watched him secretly and decided to get rid of Miguel by sabotaging the machine. The machine ended up merging Miguel's DNA with that of a spider, causing a violent explosion. Surprisingly, Miguel survived, but was transformed into a fanged, clawed creature. Now, let's talk about Spider-Man 2099's unique powers. He has organic webbing made from spinnerets, just like the original Spider-Man, but there are key differences. Miguel's genetic experiment gives him enhanced strength and agility, making him physically more capable than Peter Parker. He can perform amazing acrobatics, lift heavy objects, and fight superhuman foes. His reflexes and agility also make him a skilled combatant, allowing him to dodge attacks and move quickly during battles. Unlike Peter Parker's web-slinging, Spider-Man 2099 clings to surfaces using talons on his fingertips and toes. This gives him greater freedom to move around and easily navigate vertical environments. It's also what gives him a unique appearance, with sharp talons on his costume. Another cool power is his built-in camouflage system called Active Invisibility. This technology allows him to blend into his surroundings, making him nearly invisible to others. This stealth ability gives him an advantage in surprise attacks and covert operations, which is different from Peter Parker's more straightforward crime-fighting approach. One extraordinary feature of Spider-Man 2099 is his poisonous fangs, similar to venomous spiders. These fangs can paralyze people, including superpowered individuals like Namor the Submariner. It's a powerful ability, making him a formidable version of Spider-Man. However, one thing Miguel doesn't have is the spider sense like Peter Parker. Despite this, his unique powers and abilities make Spider-Man 2099 a remarkable and strong iteration of the web-slinging hero. Let's quickly talk about some of the bad guys Spider-Man 2099 has faced in case they show up in a future movie. First, there's Goblin 2099, a futuristic version of the Green Goblin with even more advanced technology. Then, there's Cannibal, a darker future version of Vulture. Also, a character named Flipside can copy the powers of both Spider-Man and Venom. In addition, Venom 2099 himself is one of the coolest villains in the 2099 universe. And there's a major villain called Morlun, along with the Inheritors. Although they aren't from the year 2099, they were big bads in the Spider-Verse story and gave Miguel a tough challenge. It won't be surprising if they appear in upcoming Spider movies. For those new to Spider-Man 2099 comics, a good starting point is Spider-Man 2099 Volume 1, Out of Time, by Peter David and Will Sliney. It introduces Miguel O'Hara battling futuristic villains and navigating the world of 2099 as Spider-Man. Then, you can jump into Spider-Man 2099 Volume 2, Spider-Verse, also by Peter David. In this story, Miguel teams up with other Spider-Men from different dimensions to take on Morlun and the Inheritors. Lastly, check out Spider-Man 2099 Volume 3, Smack to the Future, by Peter David and Will Sliney. Miguel goes time traveling and encounters his own future in this fun story. Also, here's a little teaser on the second issue of Volume 1 to whet your appetites. Miguel O'Hara tells his holographic digital assistant, Lila, about his strange transformation. Aaron Delgado had secretly sabotaged the genetic process, turning Miguel into a monstrous creature with talons and other spider-like abilities. Miguel then fights Delgado and accidentally causes an explosion that damages the Alchemax building. Later, Miguel encounters a man dressed as Thor who mistakes him for Spider-Man. They team up and escape from the scene. Miguel realizes he can stick to walls and has enhanced vision like a spider. Public Eye security agents find him, and he narrowly escapes by clinging to a building. Meanwhile, Tyler Stone, the Alchemax boss, receives a tense call from Tiger Wilde, who is unhappy with Alchemax's performance. Venture, who is an elite agent, investigates the lab's damage and notices signs of Delgado and Miguel's presence. Back in his apartment, Miguel is shocked to find his transformation wasn't a dream. He worries about controlling his newfound abilities. His brother Gabe visits and asks about Alchemax and the addictive drug Rapture. Miguel hides him from Venture, who is tracking the escaped Spider-Man. To distract Venture, Miguel attaches a piece of a glider to his costume and confronts Venture. Moreover, he tries to act fearless, even though he's scared. And furthermore, here's a little bit more from issue number 46, the very last issue of Volume 1. After defeating the Goblin, Spider-Man faces a new crisis when an army of Atlantean warriors attacks the Alchemax building. He's torn between his identity as Miguel O'Hara, the CEO of Alchemax, and Spider-Man, who owes nothing to the company. Despite this conflict, he helps the Public Eye fight off the invaders. He discovers that the Atlanteans are under orders from their leader, Atuma. Spider-Man tries to reason with them, but they see him as an enemy. The Vulture unexpectedly saves Spider-Man from an attack, but he plans to kill both Spider-Man and Father Jennifer, who he has taken as a hostage. Also, Miguel's mother, Conchata, leads the counterattack against the Atlanteans. Tyler Stone, meanwhile, plans to escape to Alchemax's Mars colony, but he's not as helpless as he seems, and in the process, kills an Atlantean warrior. Spider-Man subsequently reveals his true identity to the Vulture, thus shocking him. After one more battle, the Vulture flees, leaving bombs in the building. Spider-Man treats his wounds while he orders an evacuation. Afterwards, he, Father Jennifer, and Conchata search for the bombs, but tragedy strikes as Conchata is shot and dies. Tyler Stone is also fatally shot. Ultimately, Spider-Man and Father Jennifer manage to escape on a spaceship as the Alchemax building explodes. And so, Miguel now wonders what the next chapter of his life will bring.